Are you a Ponzi scheme victim? Are you contemplating suicide? That question has proven to be a lifesaver. If you have a friend or a family member who may be isolated, who you know that is involved in crypto opportunities, the best question you could ask them right now, with all the doom and gloom that's going on in the crypto world, is, are you contemplating suicide? What do you do if somebody comes back and says, yes, I am? Today's tubecast and podcast, I have a guest speaker by the name of Michael Hemps Seed, and he talks about his experience in helping people who have mental illness. He's an author of a book called Being a True Hero, Understanding and Preventing Suicide in Our Community. He's also a 10X speaker, and he's willing to help people over Zoom who reach out to him. And he will give you some practical advice that you may be able to give to a friend, or reach out to him if you do have those thoughts. He's willing to help. There's so many pyramid schemes, multi-level marketing opportunities, Ponzi schemes, and online scams going around at the moment. And people around the globe are getting scammed out of billions of dollars. Have you ever thought about where that money is actually coming from? The demographics of people that are being scammed is actually 50 and above, going by my research. They get involved in these Zoom meetings. They listen to people's stories who are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars and telling people how wonderful it is and how they're getting their return on their investment. They're preaching a message of doom and gloom, telling people that pensions are not safe. I have personally interviewed 2 people that have taken all of their pension funds out and put it into HyperVerse, being told that within 600 days, they're going to get 3 times their investment. When I first started doing these videos exposing Ponzi schemes, I thought people were greedy. I thought, did you really think that people were going to get 3 or 4 times their return on their investment in such a short period of time? But when I interviewed these people that were about to retire and they tell me their stories, I realized that they have been fooled. If you are a victim, don't feel that you were silly. A lot of people will not talk to me about them losing their investment. In fact, they clamber, they keep it to themselves, they isolate themselves. Often they're widowed or widowers, and they've literally lost their life savings. They are home alone. And that's why we need to, as a community, reach out to these people and maybe ask them that very question. Are you contemplating suicide? I have asked multiple people that question, and it has always turned out for the better. No one has ever told me off for asking such a personal question. I've had 2 people in my immediate family commit suicide. I was part of a religious cult. I was a Jehovah's Witness. My stepfather, when I was 9 years of age, took his own life, and my sister, who was 2 years older than me, took her own life on the same day that my stepfather took his own life at the same age, many years later. They couldn't live up to the expectations that the Jehovah's Witness organization put on them. I've had suicidal thoughts. These crypto opportunities often wrap around you a community. The community are there. They're often the ones taking your money. And they're trying to wrap you around a community, saying that it's caring and they really care about you. But when you start questioning the fact, where's my money? How do I get my money out? They throw you out of the communities just like they did when I was involved in the religious cult. So don't think that you were stupid. Don't think that you didn't know what you were thinking and you can't understand how you made such a decision to take out your money and invest it in a get-rich-quick opportunity. The guys and the girls that are in these Zoom meetings are trained professionals. Many of them have NLP training, and a lot of them have been multi-level marketers for many years. They know how to overcome those obstacles and those people that are negative, like they say, I am. So there is help out there. There is a future out there, even if you've lost all your money to a Ponzi scheme. Money is not the key to happiness. In fact, it's just about the love of money is the root of all evilness. Michael Hemps Seed, as I said, is a good friend of mine. He's wrote a book. I'm not trying to push his book. We will have links to his website. You can go there and read some chapters of his books. But more importantly, he gets the juices flowing. He's talking about, yes, the elephant in the room. And we all should be talking about the elephant in the room. Let's not ignore that these bandits have come out here and coerced people into a doom and gloom message and convince people to put their life savings into a get-rich-quick crypto opportunity, and then just push those people to the side. And then often you'll see the same people when one Ponzi scheme falls over. There was a Ponzi scheme called stablefund.app, and that has just frozen everyone's withdrawals. And now they say that they are going to give 1 times return for everyone that's invested. And they're also starting up a new platform, version 2, where people can use their dead money to go into the new Ponzi scheme. Same has happened with HyperVerse. Right now, HyperVerse, they tell us their own statistics that 1.6 million people had signed up for HyperVerse. That means that the minimum investment was $300 or 300 USDT, which makes it, on the minimum, a $4 billion scam. People at the top made a whole lot of money, and these are the ones that you may have seen in the Zoom meetings coaching you to put your life savings in there, preaching a message that it's doom and gloom in the world and that your only savior is to take out your safe Ponzi money in your retirement fund and put it into a Ponzi scheme. It's terrible. These guys are now starting off promoting other Ponzi schemes. It's rampant out there. There's a real scamdemic. I really need your support. I need you to hit the thumbs up, share these videos, comment on these videos, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the bell and you'll be notified when new videos come out. Hopefully next week I'll have an article in the New York Times. I've been interviewed 4 times by the New York Times, and the article should be coming out next week, which I'm really excited about. It talks about the parallels of religion and Ponzi schemes, and also my journey as a dyslexic person. Now, what is the parallel? I've noticed that a lot of people believe in the blockchain. They believe in the technology. They trust in crypto. That is practically the same as saying to people they believe in the Bible and the truths that the elders from the church preach. Very similar parallels. Then what underneath that is the communities, the brotherhood. And often they merge in the two together. In your head, if you're a religious person, which is the ones they target, you can see there's being part of a community. I personally know what it was like to be kicked out of the Jehovah's Witness faith at the time. I'm glad now, but it took me years to actually form my own community of friends and family, and I value that so much today. Very similar, the demographics of people that they're targeting in these Ponzi schemes are people who are about to retire, people that have been widows, or I've forgotten lost their loved ones, living home alone, lonely people, and they've enjoyed being part of the community. Now these same people have found out they've lost their money and they've been kicked out of the community. I can appreciate what that does to us, and that's why I've asked Michael Hemps Seed to come on to my Tubecast or my podcast and talk about some practical things that we can do to help mental illness. It's nothing to be ashamed of what's happened to you, but the future is bright. So let's listen to what Michael has to offer us, and let's see what we can glean from his words of wisdom. All Michael's contact details will be in the description below. And remember, Michael is willing to talk to you over Zoom if you want to reach out to him. Good morning. Welcome along. This is the Danny the HEK YouTube. What's Tubecast? I forget. It's a podcast. It's everything. It's my YouTube channel. Do what you like, so they tell me. Hey, today I've got a valued guest with me, Michael Hemps Seed. I've known Michael for quite a few years now, and I think you're actually responsible for actually getting me into podcasting. Did you know that, Michael?
I didn't know that. That's something interesting. So
Yep.
to all the fans out there, I'm sorry, it's my fault.
Yes, it is. The radio, the Lighthouse, was that?
Lighthouse of Hope, yes, it was a radio show I had for a while.
Yeah, that was awesome. And you asked me to come along as a speaker, and I've got to know you quite. Oh, we must have known each other at least for about 10 years. Maybe are we getting there?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, why I asked Michael to come on to my YouTube channel and discuss things. What do you specialize in, Michael?
So I'm the director of a specialist mental health service called Frontiers of Hope. And one of my key things I'm particularly interested and passionate about is suicide prevention. I wrote a book on suicide prevention called Being a True Hero, Understanding and Preventing Suicide in Your Community. And it's been quite widely used throughout New Zealand. Say New Zealand Police have used it, New Zealand Army medics. So I'm very passionate about suicide prevention.
Yeah, and you've given me some tips that I've actually employed quite a few times, and to my surprise, the response that I've had is just exactly in line with the research that you said. The one I will share is if you are talking to somebody and you think that this guy's not, or this lady's not the right frame of mind, you ask them point blank, are you contemplating suicide? Which seems like a really personal question, but to my surprise, quite a few times people have actually said, yes, I am.
Yeah.
And then what would you recommend you do when somebody actually acknowledges they are contemplating suicide?
Yeah. The first thing is, not being afraid of asking that question. Sometimes people think, oh, that's a bit personal, or I shouldn't ask that. You could save someone's life by asking that. So never be afraid to ask, even if you feel a bit uncomfortable. And then the big thing is, if someone says they're suicidal or they have an active plan, stay with them and get them some help. If you're not sure where to take someone, a GP is a really good place to take someone. Hopefully you can see a GP much faster than you can see a counsellor. So taking them to a GP, or if it's a significant issue, the emergency department at a hospital, but basically stay with the person and get them some help. And then once they've got more help, then you can leave them alone after that.
So you don't just tell them a few jokes and tell them to cheer up and change their diet?
No. If someone's got to the point of suicide, there's a good reason why they've got there. So always take it seriously. And also remember, what they've told you may not be the full story. So it may sound to you like they're getting upset over something really small, but there could be a big part of the story that you don't know about.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. And I've literally probably said that to well over 10 people anyway. I've never had someone tell me off for asking that very question. In fact, they're actually quite pleased that I've actually showed an interest in them, taking the time out to actually be intuitive enough to actually notice that something's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And even if you do offend them, it doesn't matter. Someone's life is more important than whether they're offended or not. So even if you do offend the person, it doesn't matter. Saving their life is more important.
right. And is it true that no one's ever died of embarrassment, or is that wrong?
Don't think so.
No, but yeah, so that's cool. All right, so the reason why I wanted you to come on is because I've been getting involved in, busting these Ponzi schemes, and I've started interviewing quite a few people that have lost a lot of money. And two of the people that I have actually asked, I employed that question, do they feel suicidal? And they've actually said, yes, I have had suicidal thoughts. And because I'm doing it over Zoom and they're in other countries, I feel like I'm a little bit helpless. And also, staying in touch with everyone is quite hard work. So I thought I'd bring you on because a lot of people, what I've noticed, have been, they don't want to come on Zoom and they don't want to broadcast to the world. They're embarrassed they've lost their money and all different other reasons. So I thought if people are watching this video and they have lost their money and they are feeling really low, then I'd like to be able to give them some advice, or I want you to give them some advice of things they could practically do, and maybe the mentality behind people that get involved in these get rich quick opportunities, because money is a thing that we all strive after, and when we have it taken away from us in a hurry, it can obviously get those thoughts working negatively.
Yeah. Shall we start with that perhaps? That I think a lot of people don't realize that, say, losing a large sum of money that could make someone suicidal. I think a lot of people think that someone will only contemplate suicide after a long history of depression. Maybe they've had depression for 5 or 10 years. And a lot of people are really surprised to learn that suddenly losing a lot of money can be a trigger for suicidal thoughts. But many people have seen the film It's a Wonderful Life. It's about a man that owns a loan company, and then one day he loses, in today's money, what's the equivalent of $100,000, and he thinks about suicide. And in the morning, he was perfectly fine, he was perfectly happy, he had a lot to live for, and then suddenly, when he was faced with such an overwhelming loss, he thought about suicide. And that doesn't just happen in movies, as you've said, and I've experienced too with many people. Suddenly losing a lot of money, unfortunately, can trigger suicidal thoughts in people. So we need to be aware that this is a risk factor.
Hmm. The pattern there I've noticed with these people who they have Zoom meetings, and I've literally been in these Zoom meetings where they have nearly just under 2,000 people in these Zoom meetings, and they're getting preached to by the people who are running the Zoom meetings, and there's a community that's all staged and they come on, and it's kind of like these people that are new in here, they think, oh, I'm part of a community, and they're sort of pushed or coached into getting involved with these things. So not only do they realize they've been scammed, they also, the community that they're part of doesn't want anything to do with them when they realize that they've lost their money, and they ditch them. So they lose not just money, they lose the community.
So one of the things I'd say to that is sometimes people feel really pressured to invest in something. They have people say to them, if you miss this opportunity, you will miss the best opportunity of your life. And people feel like there's a lot of pressure. What I'd say to that is there's always another opportunity going to come along. So the world is full of opportunities. There's no shortage of opportunities. So don't feel that, oh, if I don't invest in this thing right now because this person's telling me I've only got 1 hour to invest in it. Well, just stop and think about that for a moment. If you miss out on this opportunity, there will be plenty more in the future. A really good idea is maybe if you are thinking about investing in something, maybe talk about this with a trusted family member or a friend offline. I think sometimes people put a lot of weight on the advice they get on internet forums and things like that. But you don't
Mm.
know who these people are. You might not have met them. So I'd really encourage you to talk to a trusted friend or family member, someone that you actually know, someone that's in real life, and try and get a bit of advice from them. And that try and takes away some of the pressure, and it also try and takes away some of the impulsive thinking. So pause, consult someone else, and really think about it.
Mm. I notice also they paint a picture of wealth and rich. I mean, most of the promotional stuff I see, they're on a yacht somewhere.
Yeah,
Um, like just recently, I had to find another place to rent because I've lost. We had to move out of our house, and then the guy that was badgering me online was picking on the suit I was wearing, and
yeah,
the fact that I had to get my rent money together.
yeah,
And I'm going, why do you think people have this "I'll be happy when I'm rich"
yeah.
mentality? Like some people travel around the world on a shoestring because they love to travel and they don't have any wealth. I mean, does they a lot happier than a lot of people who might be the richest people in the world?
Yeah. It's really interesting. If you go back to the 60s and you asked young people, what do you want out of life? The number one thing they said was friendships. Today, if you ask young people what do they want out of life, either the top or the second thing they say is either money or fame. And so we've had a significant shift in what our values are. So what we often think is that, yeah, if we get rich, that will solve all our problems. And what we often don't realize is that problems tend to follow us. Being rich doesn't necessarily solve problems. I've worked with some incredibly wealthy individuals over the years. And one of the things I've learned about mental health is it doesn't discriminate. you could be incredibly poor, and you can be incredibly rich, and these things can hit you equally. What I would say is that does make life worth living is meaningful relationships, friendships, connections, challenging yourself, learning. These are all things that really make your life worth living. Unfortunately, what we know about wealth is it actually tends to diminish happiness. So a lot of people think, say, if I was a millionaire, then I'd be happy. But a lot of people get to that million point and then they think, oh no, I've only got $1 million. That's nowhere near enough. I need 10 million. I need 100 million. And so actually they become less satisfied with what they have. The other thing we know about, say, if your dream is to own a Ferrari, we know that buying a Ferrari makes you feel ecstatic for about a week. And then unfortunately that feeling starts to wear off. So if you're trying to build your happiness on things like that, in terms of rewards, it's not very long lasting and it doesn't actually work very well.
The interesting one for me, I got to speak to a class full of children, about 60 of them once, and it was about dyslexia at the time. And I asked them who wants to be rich, and they all put their hand up. And I said, well, how rich do you want to be? How much money? $1 million? $2 million? Keep your hand up. And then I asked them, what are you going to do with the money?
Yeah.
And no one had an answer. And I said, so if you don't have a purpose for the money, then what's the use of striving after something that you have no purpose for?
Yeah. Just one other thing I'll mention, lots of studies show that volunteering, so helping people in need, actually probably makes you feel far better than winning or earning a lot of money. So there's things like this that you can do that can actually build your happiness, your self-worth, and meaning in life, that aren't just about money.
The timing of these scams and the desperation of people has really been amplified by COVID-19.
Yeah.
I mean, people are now au fait being on Zoom and talking and doing videos. A lot of meetings are all done over Zoom, and everyone's quite happy about that. But it's also the isolation and the loneliness, and then be able to have a window into the world has certainly made it, really easy for these scammers to actually get into people's homes. But I think isolation and loneliness is something I've had a lot to do with the loneliness side of my social groups. I mean, what's some practical things that people could do? Because as I said earlier, we've got these communities, they want to be part of a community. I mean, how do you find good communities? Like volunteering, it sounds like a great way to find a community.
Yeah. So most cities have got an organisation in Christchurch. There's Volunteering Canterbury, that lists a whole lot of different options to volunteer with. But there's lots of opportunities no matter where you live in the world. Trying to find things like that. There's also the great website meetup.com, and there's groups for everything. There's walking groups, there's quiz night groups, if you like playing sport for fun. Some groups just have a meal for the sake of it. So trying to find things like that can be really helpful.
I've always had a saying, becoming a better version of yourself. And often when I give out more, I do actually feel like I'm, like you said, by helping others, it certainly does make you feel, it gives you more confidence. What about
Can I just
other
raise one
things?
other point? Can I raise one other point here?
Yep.
Um, One other thing to know, a lot of people think, how do millionaires live? And a lot of people think that millionaires, they drive a Ferrari and they wear Rolex watches or things like that. There's a fascinating book called The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley. And he interviewed a whole lot of genuine millionaires, so not people that just on Facebook pretend to be millionaires. These are actual millionaires. And what he found was that most millionaires do
Yep.
not drive Ferraris. They do not wear Rolex watches. They do not go on expensive holidays. They're actually really careful with their money. And so sometimes challenging the idea of what a millionaire actually looks like can also be really helpful.
Did you come along to my think tank meeting when we had the cookie time guy? Did you go to that
No, I
one?
didn't come to that
Yeah.
one, no.
Yeah, he was quite cool. A couple of things I got from him coming along. He said that you've got to have your failures in business because they are the compost for your next business opportunity. But I
Yeah,
asked him what he drove, and he's a millionaire. And he said he's got a Nissan Leaf, and it cost him. He got a second-hand one, 17,000
yeah,
at the time.
yeah,
But he said he used to have a $250,000 Porsche,
yeah.
and he said he got sick of driving up. He loved the car, but he said he just is killing the planet, so he got rid of it.
Yeah.
His friends thought, what are you doing? So yeah. What is going on in people's heads when they are feeling suicidal? I know it's a chemistry thing with some people. It can be a weak moment in time,
Yeah.
hasty decisions.
Yeah. I think maybe just if we take a step back and look at, say if someone does invest in a Ponzi scheme or something like that, and they suddenly lose a lot of money, probably what attracted to it in the first place was significant returns. So people are told, you're going to be rich, you're going to be a millionaire, invest a couple of $1,000, and then in 6 months, you can, be rich. So one of the things that can be really challenging for people is to realize how much of a mistake they've made or to realize how stupid they've been. And really what it comes down to is humility. Sometimes people think, how could I have been that stupid? How could I have made this mistake?
Mm,
Uh, Certainly with my mental health work over the years, I've realized that some very intelligent people fall for some really dumb scams. So it's not as if it's only people that are stupid or something like that. There's actually a lot of people that can fall for this. And I think one of the things where it can start to spiral out of control for people is when people start beating themselves up, when they start to say, I'm such a loser, I'm such an idiot. And it's when people have thoughts like this that I think that can be the start of suicidal thoughts. So try and have a realistic view of this and say, I made a mistake. I got this wrong, but also other people have fallen for this. What I really like about your podcast is that you're trying to get people to open up about this.
mm.
I think there's a tremendous shame in falling for something like this. And if people feel like they're the only one, they feel, isolated. That makes things much worse. But if they actually hear, well, there's lots of people out there that have been through this, that can be helpful. I think when it comes to suicide, one of the things that can happen is people catastrophize things. So people think, I've lost all this money, I'm never going to be able to recover this,
Mm.
or I'm never going to be able to get through this. As I said before, it's important to know that there's a lot of opportunities in life. Sometimes people think, say, if they lost a lot of money at 50, well, that would mean their life is over, they can't possibly recover that. But Colonel Sanders, who founded KFC, he actually made most of his money after age 60. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, he also made, I think, something like 99% of his wealth after age 60. So some people worry that, if they lose money late in life, or it's too late to do anything about it. That's not necessarily true. So if you do feel really shocked about this, try and find examples of people that did make money later in life. Studies of millionaires also suggest that most millionaires go bankrupt 3 times in their life. So this is part of the journey for some people. So as difficult as it can be, if people try not to catastrophize things and people try and understand that, well, yes, this is a part of life, sometimes things like this can happen.
One guy was telling me he didn't want to tell his wife
Yeah,
that he'd lost his money, and then he told her that he lost money, but he still hasn't told her how much, and it's $700, okay? So it's not a lot, but he is still
yeah,
embarrassed. And I think I would hurry up and tell your wife because
yeah,
I'd be thinking a lot more than $700, even though that might be a lot to them at
yeah.
the moment.
Yeah, I think
But,
the sooner that you talk to someone about it, and even if it's an anonymous help hotline or something like that to start off with, if
mm,
you have to tell someone to build up the courage a little bit, but I think do tell someone. I think one of the most dangerous things that can happen and where people really end up is in trouble is when they isolate themselves, when they think, I don't want to talk to anyone, I don't want to have involvement. I think as soon as you tell someone else, there is a bit of relief there. As soon as you can let someone else know what's happened, I think that can actually start to bring some healing to what's happened.
I often bring this into my podcast, and you won't know, but often people fail to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah,
I think the main point there is what overwhelms me sometimes is the fact that people don't want to talk about it and are too embarrassed. So I think,
yeah,
and the breaking that down is like people think I'm quite open and I don't have a private life. Well, I do, but I also are very open. And I found every time I talk about something, how I'm thinking, whether it's negative,
yeah,
positive, even, it
yeah,
really is good therapy for Danny. So, I mean,
mm,
where do you find someone to talk to if you are like the two people I'm thinking of that I interviewed were retired at 55, one South African guy. He was now 57, so he's been retired. And then another guy was 61, hoping to retire when he was 62, and he was on a benefit, a disability fund, pension, which they have in America.
Yeah.
And both of them had just about retired, and they're single, they're home alone.
Yeah.
And a friend down the road had introduced them into it, who they've no longer talking to them anymore. So sort of, I think there's a real niche out there. I think when I used to run the social groups, I used to find that a lot of the people that come along to my social group didn't help themselves. They would go along to a dinner and then they'd complain about something silly, like the food wasn't up to, 5-star standards, or that person over there, I know them from, how do we get on with it? And how do we not be so judgmental of people? Or why can we not say I made a silly mistake? What's the mentality behind that?
So one of the things that I've spent a lot of time working on with people is around the concept of failure and being open and honest about failure. About 10 years ago, I tried going on Britain's Got Talent, and it did not go to plan at all. Yeah. I humiliated myself, had 3,000 people in the audience yelling off at me, and then this was broadcast in front of 12 million people. And I started sharing this with people, and the surprising reaction that I got was people said that just me sharing my story was inspiring. And at first I thought these people were just trying to make me feel better about this, and they didn't really mean this. But then suddenly I started to realize that these people did actually find this inspiring. And it took me a long time to understand why, but we're not open and honest about our failures. So sometimes if we share what's happened to us, it really does break that mold, because a lot of people, everyone has a failure. Everyone does something stupid. Everyone's going to make some really, really dumb decision in their life. There will not be one person on the planet that doesn't do this.
Yeah.
When we try and pretend that, oh no, this would never happen to me, well, that's when we're not being realistic. So we need to actually be quite open and honest and say, yep, look, I stuffed up. Maybe someone loses money in a Ponzi scam. Maybe someone goes on national TV and humiliates themselves. But sooner or later, every single person in their life is going to stuff up spectacularly. So,
You went back onto America's Got Talent, didn't you?
New Zealand's Got Talent, that also didn't go to plan. So not only did I stuff up once, I stuffed up twice.
Yeah, and I think 140 countries. You rattle off 140
Yeah.
countries flag. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
good stuff. A thought did come into mind then that I was thinking of, but it's gone straight at my head now. I was going to ask you, have you ever invested in a Ponzi scheme? But I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that.
I mean, I'm quite able to. As far as I know, I've never invested in one. So I don't think so. One of the things that I try and do is, before I invest in something, I try and stop and think about it. And sometimes I take quite a bit of time, sometimes a few months, to think about things. So sometimes we live in this really fast-paced world that says you've got to act now. This closes at 5 o'clock. If you don't sign on the dot, and we seem to be in just this massive rush. And I constantly get emails from people saying, "Oh, I emailed you a while ago and I haven't received a reply."
I
And I
know.
look when their last email came, and it was 2 or 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
For goodness sake. So just slow down.
Take the chill pill.
So that's one of the ways I don't think I've invested in a Ponzi scheme, is I do try and think about things quite carefully.
I know what I was going to say earlier on. I was talking to a friend on Facebook Messenger with a video, and an email come in saying I need to pay my car registration. And I'm continuously telling people about, checking things, and it was a scam. I had to cancel my credit card. It got jammed, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how embarrassing. I'm a scam buster, and here I am getting scammed myself while I'm talking to my mate about scams.
Yeah.
It happens
And
everywhere.
I think what can happen is, when people are in a hurry, when people are tired, this is when things can go wrong. So maybe a lesson from there is, try and pay your bills, maybe early in the morning when you're awake, or when you've got a bit of time, and really do try and pause and think about this. I got an invoice yesterday for something, and it looked really legitimate. And then I started to think about this for a while, and I thought, the amount on this invoice just doesn't sound right. And then eventually realized, looked carefully at the email, and it wasn't from the company. So, the big thing is pause. Pause, stop and think. If you're not sure, check it out.
Yeah. I got one from PayPal, which I'm going to do a video on, and it's actually come from PayPal. It's $1,500, and if I don't do something fast and hurry along, they're going to automatically take the money out of my account. But the reply email address is actually legit. And then I thought, well, they must have logged into PayPal, created an account, and sent a money request to me, and
Yeah.
that's why it looks legit. And they gave me a
Yeah.
phone number to ring, which was Australian,
Yeah.
because they think Australia and New Zealand are the same. So I rang the guy
Yeah.
about 15 times and said some very nice things to him, but he got sick of me at the end. But I had a lot of fun doing it. I had different voices, and I was ringing up as
Yeah.
an old lady, and every time he'd get like 5 minutes into the conversation, you'd realize it's the same guy. But it's just so rampant at the moment. And I think,
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to educate people just to be more savvy. And I think what you just said makes a lot of sense. Is why do we have to do things? We're doing so much. There's so many transactions. I mean, I think I've heard you talk about how many calculations the brain does every minute.
We do we think of a fair bit. There's a lot that happens in the brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just something else to consider is that, let's say you get an email from a bank saying, if you don't pay $1,000 by midnight tonight, we will repossess your house. Well, let's stop and think for a minute, because banks don't send letters like that,
Mm.
especially in a country like New Zealand. If you miss one mortgage payment, a bank is not going to repossess your house. So
Mm.
I think a lot of scammers use panic tactics.
Yeah.
Again, slow down, pause. If it says it's urgent, it probably isn't.
Yeah. No, it's good. Well, I don't want to go on too long, but I think what is the purpose of us getting together and actually doing this YouTube, or Ubecast, I call them now, or podcast? What are we trying to accomplish by you and I getting together? Who are we trying to help? There's two people I can think of. Obviously, the victims, and obviously
Yeah.
people who are listening to these friends that are coming to them and saying, "Look, I've heard of this great opportunity. I should invest." What do you say? I mean, should we break that into two parts? How can we help the victim? How can we help the people that want to save the people who are about to be victimized? Is that the right word?
Yeah. So in terms of how do you save the people that want to be victimized, um, all the things that we've talked about today in terms of, getting people to try and think critically, sometimes Googling the scam or Googling the investment, seeing, what do other people think about this? And sometimes just be aware that if it's a good scam, sometimes the top results on Google, the first page, they do look legitimate.
Yep.
Sometimes going down to page 3 or 4 and trying to dig a little bit deeper can be really helpful. And
Mm.
also trying to educate people about what a genuine investment looks like. So, there should be information about, who is this company? Are these returns realistic? So
Mm.
if you invest in the stock market, for example, I think the average return is about 12% over the last 30 years. So that would sort of be a good investment. If someone's telling you that you can get 10 times your money in a month, well, a legitimate investment wouldn't probably focus on something like that. So
Mm.
these are all things that you can do to try and get people to look at, what does a real investment look like, and what does a fake investment look like.
Mm.
In terms of how do you help someone, I think it's really important to know that sometimes, like you said, $700. Now, to many people, maybe $700 isn't a lot of money. You don't know to that person, maybe that's a huge amount of money.
Mm.
Someone once rang me and said, I owe a telecommunications company $4,000. I want to kill myself. He thought it was this insurmountable debt. He thought he was never going to be able to pay it off.
Mm.
We've sorted it out eventually. But sometimes, even if it does seem small to us, you never know, it could be really big to the person to take it seriously.
Mm.
I think trying to get people out, volunteering, go for a walk or something like that, take their mind off it. Sometimes if people stay at home and just think over this again and again, that can be really important to do. If you believe that someone is at risk of suicide, do take them to a doctor, take them to a mental health professional. If you think they're in a seriously bad way and they're not thinking clearly, particularly if say someone's drunk, say someone lost a whole lot of money, they've started drinking heavily, and if you think that this person is not thinking clearly, they're a danger to themselves, you need to get outside help and keep them safe.
Mm. What about I lost my love dog. I had a dog for 11 years and he
Yeah,
passed away quite suddenly. And then we found that we weren't going out for our walks anymore. So we've got a new puppy now.
yeah.
But I think just quickly, really, like people what I'm trying to say is mental illness. I've had two people in my life commit suicide in my immediate family, right? And one was my sister was into drugs and she was depressed, bulimic, anorexic. And my stepfather was probably ADHD, kind of like bipolar, maybe. Now I look back, but I don't think by I don't think I could have applied any ointment to fix their thinking.
Yeah,
But does getting outside, when I used to run the social groups and take people
yeah.
hiking, I used to find that used to release good endorphins. So by doing physical exercise and getting outside the house, even if you aren't very mobile, just going for a simple walk, not running a marathon, does
Yeah.
that literally make a difference to people that are suffering with their mental health?
It
In your
certainly can. It won't work for everyone, but it certainly can help a lot of people. And what I say is find what works for you. For example, there's some people that might really enjoy walking, and other people might just enjoy having a bath to calm down and relax. Other people might enjoy going out with friends. So there's no sort of right way to manage this. There's lots of different things that you can do. And if it works well for you, if you're the sort of person that feels like, going for a walk that helps you, then absolutely you should try and do that.
Hmm. No, good stuff. I'm pretty sure that's going to help quite a few people. Now, I'm going to put links below. I'm going to put a link to your book. I presume have you got an audio book yet, mate? I'm dyslexic.
Not yet, but
Yeah.
so I've got uh, my book website is beingatruehero.com.
Yeah.
You can learn, and there's some information on there under chapters, free chapters. If you're concerned that someone's suicidal, there's a list of what to do to help someone. So that's available on there if you need it.
That's brilliant. And honestly, that asking people point blank question, are you contemplating suicide, has never backfired on me. And it is
Yeah,
one of the best bit of advice I think I've ever had from you because I'm around a lot of people. And, like I've had two people that have taken their own lives were in my social groups. And I think one of them took 2 weeks before somebody found them.
yeah.
And that highlighted the fact to me that people are lonely and they don't have anywhere to turn. And with COVID and everything, you'd be a busy man at the moment, wouldn't you?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Very busy. Yeah.
So, yep. So I really appreciate you coming along. Have you got anything else you'd like to share?
What I'd say is that a lot of people talk to me about my job, and when I tell them I work with people that are suicidal, they think I must have the worst job in the entire world. They think this must be the most sad, depressing, and miserable job that you could ever have. It's actually the most joyful job I've ever had. Because yes,
Wow.
some days I work with people on what is the absolute worst day of their entire life. But
Mm.
the amazing thing is I can catch up with these people, say, a year later or 18 months later, and many of these people told me, my life cannot be good again. There is no possible way that I can be happy. And yet
Wow.
the amazing thing is that 12 months, 18 months later, if I catch up with these people, they often say to me things like, I cannot believe that I was that low. I
Mm.
cannot believe that person that was so depressed and so miserable was actually me.
Wow.
So, as bad as some of these things are, working in the space is an incredibly joyful space because you actually get to see tremendous hope.
Mm. I think what I would get if I put myself in your shoes, because I know your brain is pretty full on, but
Yes.
I've always loved the psychology of the humans
Yeah.
and the understanding why we act and do things in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've touched on it a bit, but people feel ashamed because they made a mistake and they've got involved in a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
But the psychology around it can be broken down. And why did we act? Like if somebody said to you, green, 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 green 10 times, and you walk into a dairy and bought a drink and you come out with a green bottle, then you can see that, the psych. Why I started that because I'm thinking, what I've been doing, busting all these Ponzi schemes, I've been listening to these Zoom meetings, and I'm around all these people that are trying to find happiness and greed. And I actually have found it quite emotional, a negative. It's a lot to take on, even just being an outsider. And I'm thinking, well, you are what you eat. And I'm thinking that sometimes it's a good idea just to walk away from these opportunities and go. Like, I'm all about people having a product or a service, and I'm all about people building a business up. But I think the negativeness that you're around the wrong type of people can actually be causing you grief.
Yeah. I think try and look for positive examples. Something I've learned a lot about recently with quite a few younger people is, who do they follow in terms of influencers? Do they follow influencers that moan and complain about everything and really bring you down? Or do you actually follow people that you feel uplifted afterwards?
Don't worry about that. Well, what are influencers? That's a whole topic in itself, mate. Are they veneers? I call them veneers. Do you know what I mean by that? Michael's frozen. Come on, Michael, come back to me. You've frozen, Michael. Whoop, you're back.
We broke up. Yeah, we broke up there for a second. Yep.
That's good. I made fun of you while you was frozen. It was good.
Yeah.
What did you get that last bit? Oh, what I was talking about influencers, and I call them veneers. Did you get that?
Yeah. I think that's something that's, we need to, really look at who do we follow.
Yeah. Who you hang around, isn't it? Well, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate you taking some of your time out of your day on a Friday in the morning in New Zealand. And it's nice to be able to, I think we've done this probably a few times now, but you're responsible for me getting in front of a microphone and becoming a podcaster. You're solely accountable for that. So
I take no responsibility for anything that may have happened.
So you've been listening to the Danny the HEK podcast and Tubecast. So this will be a video on my YouTube channel. Please do tune in, have a look, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell, and then you'll get my latest videos. And once again, Michael, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Happy to be here.
Being a true hero. Are you contemplating? Pixel, I'm recording. Yay! You got to be on the video. Can you say Tubecast? Tubecast. Tubecast. Today's guest on my YouTube cast. Today in my Tubecast, or my Ponzi YouTube cast. I can never get that word right. Tubecast or Ponzi cast. Ponzi cast. What the hell's a Ponzi cast? No one's talking about the elephant in the room.